we're going to kick it over to Jerica to welcome us and share a little bit about the history of Dandelion.
Welcome, everyone. I am so honored to be in this space, bearing witness with all of you to the incredible place that this program has come to and to share with you our dreams and vision for taking it forward. So I really just want to touch briefly on the seeds of the Dandelion program for those of you who may not know the story, the beginnings of the process that led us ultimately to this moment, because it's a story of change and growth. And where we are today is not at all where we began. Back in 2018, I know, a million years ago, Lisa and I were having a conversation that I'm sure many of you here have had, which is we were basically bemoaning the fact that there are so few resources for arts and culture workers when it comes to learning about the nuts and bolts of working with finance. And she and I had both had many conversations with colleagues, with clients, with affiliate programs, with people we were working with about the fact that the few resources that were available either weren't well suited to artists or too expensive for artists to access. And so we had the idea that maybe we could get together and create a training program of our own to increase that accessibility. We really wanted to create something from the get-go that would not only allow arts and culture workers to increase their own skills and comfort in managing money, we also really wanted whatever we created in turn to enable any participants to share those skills with others in their communities, which is where the name Dandelion comes from. It was inspired in part by Adrienne Marie Brown's incredible writing on dandelions in her amazing book, Emergent Strategy, which if you have not read, I fully recommend. And we really wanted to make sure that the program was in service to and guided by the needs of our community, not just the ideas we had in our heads. So we applied for and we're very grateful to secure a $20,000 grant from the Zellerbach Family Foundation. I believe someone from Zellerbach is here with us today to fund research and development for our program. And as many of you know, when we got the grant, our first step to try and understand the community needs was a giant survey. We launched that survey last year, and we put a lot of time into developing a set of questions that we felt would be deep enough and extensive enough to actually tell us something. And many of you present here today very graciously gave your time and effort to participating in that survey. And I just want to offer our very heartfelt thanks for your time and your insight. And we learned a great deal. And one of the things that we learned from the survey is that surveys are really a flawed methodology when it comes to understanding people's real and lived experiences. Very fortunately for us, Independent Arts and Media had an existing relationship with Jason, and at Lisa's suggestion, we brought them on, and they brought Crystal on to evaluate and redirect our process. And together, they made it really clear that we needed to radically change our methodology. So what emerged from that was so much more deeper, and so much more relational, and so much more radical, and so much more visionary than I could ever have imagined when we first conceived of the program, which was like originally a very standard kind of we provide a training program, people teach the thing, you take the class. And it was Jason and Crystal who developed our focus groups, our one-on-ones, the personal interviews, and the group discussions, which completely altered the course of the program development and brought us to the very different place which we are today. And of course, the survey did give us insight and valuable data. It's just that the insight it gave us was very limited and very one-dimensional. And through the focus groups and the one-on-ones, and later on through the development of the first Dandelion cohort, who you will be hearing from today, we were given a very different and much more radical set of learnings, which have been synthesized into today's presentation. I hope that you will consider reading the full Dandelion report itself if you have not had a chance already. I think it will surprise some of you. I hope that it will be very affirming to others of you. It not only details our learnings in depth, it also provides pull quotes and a deep dive on the approach and methodology that underpins the presentations that you're about to hear today. The report gives the context of what really caused us to shift away from simply offering the kind of standard hierarchical training model that we had kind of conceived of originally. And now the path that we are following is built on our 4 fundamental learnings from the survey. I'm sorry, not from the survey, from the report. And the 4 fundamental learnings are, first, artists want and need more peer-to-peer learning opportunities. Second, healthy and healing relationship building must be our guiding star. Third, our communities need more Indigenous, Black, disabled, trans, queer, immigrant, low-income, and POC trainers who know and practice peer-based, community-centered practices. And this is a big one, money, not training, solves inequity. So that's really kind of our background story of change and shift from a fairly standard idea to a much more radical vision. And without further ado, I gratefully hand you over to Jason, Crystal, and our incredible cohort of Mason, Violeta, Afia, and Sabereh to share the bold, emerging, relational, peer-based vision that has taken root over these last many months. And I am so grateful to you all for being here with us.
Thank you, Jerica. Crystal, do you want to talk a little bit about the forms that we took that took shape in 2022?
Yeah, so basically, we have an advisory group that is made up of Lisa, Jerica, myself, and Jason. And we met pretty much monthly to sort of talk about and discuss what was happening in the cohorts, but also that's where we sort of came up with ideas and thoughts about how to sort of expand away from just surveys to more relationship-centered ways of gaining and giving information. And basically, we also, we came up with the cohort by looking at people who had taken, who had been involved in the one-on-ones, who had been involved in the surveys. And we also wanted to have someone who hadn't been involved with the project at all. So we basically looked at who we wanted to serve with this program, which was, people of color, poor people, queers, refugees, immigrants, disabled people. And so those were the criteria we used, including the criteria of having someone, at least one person in the group that was a Bay Area native. So this is how we came to choose Sabereh, Mason, Afia, and Violeta.
So Dandelion Arts Finance Training Program is the people that you see here today. We are the ones that have been carrying out the work over the last year. We have done this work, as Crystal mentioned, in two different ways. One is through our advisory group, taking a look at the higher order things, trying to figure out how everything fits into a broader picture. And then the second one is through a cohort-based learning model that used peer-based pedagogy and praxis. Since April of this year, we have been meeting every single month with our cohort of 4 amazing fellows with us, Afia, Mason, Violeta, and Sabereh. And during those 3-hour sessions, we've really dug into what is it that they want to teach their peers that was informed by the research that we unearthed through the Dandelion reports that we compiled together. Each one of our fabulous people took one central topic and built from that central topic. What we have discovered along the way is that a lot of these topics are, 1, interconnected to each other, 2, that our people already have the expertise to teach on this topic, and 3, we just need some more structures to be able to identify exactly what it is that folks are going to present and how it is that they want to present it, which is what we focused on. Additional support was provided through one-on-one methodologies where we, Crystal or I, met one-on-one with each one of the cohort members in a rotational model. So one month I would meet with them, and then another month Crystal would meet with folks, and so on and so forth, back and forward. And it was a great way for us to really co-create something connected to each other, which is what you're going to be hearing about today. First up, we have the fabulous Sabereh, and I'm going to stop my screen share, and I am going to remove all of the pins. I need to speak this out loud because otherwise I forget to do things, and I am going to spotlight Sabereh, who is going to talk about the workshop and lesson that she has been developing. Sabereh, take it away.
Thank you very much. Jason, Crystal, Lisa, Jerica, and all the people who were part of this program. I really enjoyed it. First of all, my name is Sabereh Kashi. I'm originally from Iran. I'm a documentary filmmaker and cultural strategist. And what it means, cultural strategist, is that I'm using authentic personal storytelling to help people, communities, organizations, and governments to have constructive dialogue to create change. And by the way, the name of my documentary film is no longer Home Yet Far Away. It's The Patient Woman, but I will get to it soon. So anyway, but the work of the workshop that I am offering, it's called Assessing Labor, or How to Assess Labor. So the reason assessing labor is important is because being an artist myself, I have realized that the artistic and creative work is something that what I call interoceptive labor, which means it's a kind of a labor that is it takes a lot of deep internal and emotional process. And often that type of work it takes a long time, this type of work, to come to any type of like tangible product. And what I have seen time and time again is that the funders generally are looking more for the product or for processes that are tangible, visible, and obvious or measurable, and which I call exteroceptive labor. And that is something that sometimes it's not easy to get to early in the process, or sometimes in a long time in the process. For example, I can give, and because of that, a lot of artists are suffering economically because they cannot get paid properly for their work when they are in the contemplation phase of their creative process. So the example is my own documentary film. It's a personal film, and I have been working on it for many, many years, actually. Like, I think it's probably 13 years, and I have been in North America since 2001. And I had to make this film because I wanted to really create a connection between the reality that I had experienced back in my home country and what I was living in this country. And I wanted to make a film so people understand Iran better, which now, with what's happening in Iran, people know, a lot of people want to know better about Iran and women in Iran. But I realized that the issue was so complicated that I had to actually go and tell a story, like a personal story about my own life and my own coming into my, Iranian American identity, or my new identity. And that process, it was so hard to actually bring it to something that is for funders, for grants. It was so hard to actually make it understandable, or something that is measurable and tangible. And I really, I have raised some grants, but it's been a very, very difficult process for me. And I have done a lot of unpaid work, or just doing some side projects so I can just barely minimum just live so I can continue working on the film. But then when the pandemic happened, it was an interesting twist, because I got actually I became eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance, which was, for once, I had some money coming without me having to write grants for it or do something about it, so funders can just or try to raise money for the film through the community. I didn't have to do anything. The money, fortunately, there was some money coming, And at that point, I realized that I actually didn't want to do any work on my film, like any like editing work. I was just doing a lot of processing work. And that ended up creating a breakthrough in the process. And finally, I have come again to a new name. It's called The Patient Woman. And I'm feeling ready to launch the project. And so anyway, I just, that was like a really informative process for me. And I would like, the way I want to do this workshop is that I want other artists to understand how much that part of the work that is interoceptive is so important and so valuable, and also understand that how much is undervalued, unfortunately. And I want artists to be reminded of the value of that part of the process, and also for funders, hopefully, to understand that, to value the creative, the interoceptive part of the artistic process, and also find ways to kind of fund it so the work can be really high quality artistic work. So I would like to say a little bit about my process in this workshop, in this cohort. I truly enjoyed this process. It was really a nourishing work for me, and it always felt so exciting. It didn't feel like work. It felt like really just having fun, you know, with a bunch of, you know, other artists, and just like really connect with each other in a deep level and coming up with new ideas. And I felt very supported by Jason and Crystal during the process. And I actually have a PhD, and I have shied away from teaching, but this cohort really made me excited about teaching again. And I am so excited to put this workshop out for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabereh.
Up next will be Mason.
Alrighty, sorry about that. My external keyboard was preventing me from unmuting myself. But hi, everyone. My name's Mason J. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my experience in this, and my hopes for how this kind of day goes for everyone. So, like I said, my name is Mason J. I serve as interim executive director of Radar Productions, a lead artist for Still Here San Francisco, board member at large of the GLBT Historical Society, and I was the 2017 to 2019 SFPL Hormel Archives Fellow. I'm also a former foster youth, a complex trauma survivor, and a two-spirit Black, Native American, European queer who grew up in Yelamu on occupied Ohlone land, which is also known as San Francisco. So I work as an artist, a historian, an educator, and cultural producer. The name of my curriculum is How to Understand and Repair Harm in Nonprofits. The reasons I chose it were because, as a recently appointed executive director, I found that there were many commonalities in the problems I was facing during my very do-it-yourself onboarding during the pandemic. I found that others were adjusting to new roles and struggling, and so were people in long-term ones. And so the first three concerns that came to mind with me were a lack of education about the totality of nonprofit funding and how it operates. When people like myself...
Mason, I think something may be wrong with your microphone. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Okay.
Is that any better?
There we
Yeah.
go. Thank you.
Okay. Should I start over? Sorry.
No,
I feel like you missed.
It just happened.
Okay. So I'll resume where I was. Okay. Well, thank you for letting me know before I got too far into things. Anyways, I was saying that when people come from an art production or a lower income background like myself, access to education around that type of work and around nonprofit work in general is usually not made available to us, even though that's one of the first places we end up if we don't end up in the service industry or underground economies. Additionally, I found that there's a real culture of silence that often prevents marginalized groups from admitting we don't know. As a person of color, as a queer person, as a trans person, it has in the past been difficult for me to admit I don't know in a professional setting for fear of either job loss or retaliation or dismissal in the future when I actually do know something because I didn't know something in the past. Things like that often lead to people not speaking up and just kind of doing things and hoping they turn out right. One of the second things was that sometimes orgs misuse funds. And when I say misuse funds, I don't mean like someone running off into the night with a bag of money. It can be as simple as not understanding how the restricted funds for their grant work and allocating them other places. Other times it can be entirely intentional, and a lack of oversight prevents this from being addressed. The third one was that what community versus grant funding looks like. And so when we started this process with Dandelion, it became really clear to me that the primary problems which needed to be resolved were developing an understanding of how unrestricted and restricted grant funding functioned, unpacking the tokenism being experienced, as well as the flaws of hiring and onboarding practices that aren't access centered, that aren't culturally competent, and then lastly, how to navigate the bureaucracies of harm without the prison industrial complex or punitive justice. This last one was especially important to me as a police brutality survivor, that in dealing with these things that I not involve the prison industrial complex as much as possible and at all costs. So my workshop actually sidesteps this problem by working through accountability instead of criminalization to repair the injustice that's occurred, either intentionally or as a result of ignorance, oversight, or lack of knowledge. We also analyze and problem solve the nuanced instances online where missteps occur or at events that are, inaccessible to people with visual or hearing impairments or physical mobility related issues or sense sensitivities even. Things that seem very minor to orgs, but actually are really impactful to the communities they're serving. My audience for this is artists, cultural workers, and those who are funding our projects. And the reason this is actually incredibly personal to me is my participation in this Dandelion cohort is actually what allowed me to avoid burnout. And that's no small feat, especially in this pandemic. It also allowed me to return my nonprofit org to a good standing with the state, acquire this knowledge to share, and I entered the cohort at an intriguing time in my accidental arts admin career. However, between the tutelage of Jason and Crystal and the other members of my cohort, I was able to smooth things out as I went along and not only repair some, definitely not all, but some of the harm that myself and my org's contractors experienced. As a result of being in this workshop since April, this cohort since April, I'm now helping others who are experiencing the same thing during this time when many of us in arts nonprofits or in any sector are losing income and gigs while COVID continues. The government would like to tell us that it's over, but it's definitely continuing and still impacting a lot of us as artists. So for me, the reason I believe Dandelion should be further funded is because not only was I paid a fair wage to participate, to learn, to heal, to share my experiences, but I can now actually deliver workshops on how to repair harm and how to single-handedly, if need be, run an entire nonprofit org in a system that isn't made for community, and explore radical dreaming. Dandelion allowed participants like me, Afia, Violeta, and Sabereh, who are usually kept from this type of mentorship and usually not able to afford this type of training when it is offered. It allowed us a really phenomenal and transformative collective experience to thrive and support our growth as artists, managers, and allow us to keep giving the gift of enriching the communities we serve. With Dandelion, we aren't simply guesstimating, we're actively using what we learned. And as I close, just to give you a little bit of a sample of what we can do, I'm going to share my screen and bring up kind of the outline for how this actually looks, because it's really nice to hear all these things, but it's even better to see them. So let me share my screen, and here we go. Okay, so this is the kind of working gist of what the workshop looks like currently. So it's 2 hours, 90 minutes of content with a land acknowledgement, equity statement, guidelines, agenda, and a closing. I'm thinking 12 to 18. It's worked really good with less than 15, but if there's 18 enrollees, I'm not going to turn them away. And for it to go well, it usually requires two faculty. And the way it works is we effectively navigate the use of restricted funds. We identify when mismanagement has occurred on accident or intentionally. We rectify those complications without involving authorities, and then go through the simple 1, 2, 3s of taking over an org, how to register your org, how to change everything, how to get everything fixed at the bank. Because a lot of those things are things that people don't know sometimes when they're appointed to these high positions because of the pandemic or just because they've applied for the job. And then the next thing I've got is the goals, which are, like I said, developing the understandings, explaining how and when, what community versus grant funding looks like and how to access it, and then how to be accountable without involving the authorities, and how to repair community trust once it's been impacted by these actions. The breakdown is, like I said, it's about a 2-hour thing. So it ends up being intros, mapping, icebreakers, a session break, and then a discussion where we all get to talk about the ways, without it actually being a trauma circle, but actually the ways we need to repair harm and things like that. And then there's breakout groups and a closing activity with a share out. So that's about what I was able to come up with during this time and why I believe that we should continue to fund this. So thanks everyone so much for your time. Pardon any technical difficulties that happened in the beginning there. But yeah, that's all you've got from me.
Thank you, Mason.
Up next is Afia. And Afia, just let me know when you want me to share the screen and I will do so.
Okay, hi, I'm Afia Thompson and let's start sharing. Okay, so I was tasked with the 101s, how to conduct a 101. And
oh, you just muted yourself there.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry, one moment. Technical question. Am I changing the slide or are you, Jason?
Just let me know when to change the slide and I'll advance the slide for you.
Can you advance? So background about me, again, my name is Afia Thompson. I am a producer, an artist, an activist, a choreographer, and a dancer. I created Bahia movement, Bahiya, different than the Bahia. And so I created that with my daughter, Nafi Thompson, in 2011. And the reason why we created this particular platform is because we are plus size dancers and we have been squeezed out or shunned because of our size. And I never wanted to have that happen to anyone else, you know, whether it's their size, whether it's their gender, whatever it may be. I wanted to create a platform that's all inclusive for everyone to be able to build their love and their art. So Bahia movement, check us out. Okay, can you advance, please? So a little story about the topic. I kind of felt a little weird. I thought that this topic was boring. Why 101s is so different from every other topic that's being presented today. But then I had to stop and think about it. Wait, 101s is something that happens all the time. You're going to a cafe and you meet your friend, that's a 101. If you are a customer service representative answering phones, you're 101s. If you're at work and you are getting a evaluation, you're doing a 101. Maybe you want to interview someone and you want to pick their brain. That's a 101. So I had to take a step back and look at 101s is crucial to our environment, to our life. You may be dating someone. That's a 101, right? So we have to think about, well, I had to think about that this is actually a really, really good topic to learn, to master, and to possibly share with others, which I acquired that skill here with Dandelion. So thank you so very much for that. Advance, please. So how effective are one-on-ones? You acquire knowledge, you are empowered, you build skills and tools to, again, conduct a one-on-one or even teach someone how to do that. In that one-on-one, you can guide or you can ask for guidance, and then it can provide financial stability. Once you acquire those skills, you then possibly can be a consultant and move on. So one-on-ones are great. I realize that. And advance, please. So breaking it down a little bit more, knowledge. Knowledge is power. No one can never take that away. Once you have that knowledge, it's yours, right? And going back on my ancestry, that is something that we were banned from having. Slaves were not able to get knowledge. Slaves were not able to be able to read. They can't do that. That was something that we just were not able to do. So I value knowledge so very much. That is something that I value and I embrace and I cherish. So knowledge is power. Empowerment, again, this builds self-esteem, and it also builds a safe space. And the reason why I say a safe space is that if you're doing a one-on-one and you are working with someone that's unstable, not really comfortable, need a little guidance, you can provide that safe space for them. So a one-on-one can be all-inclusive, especially providing someone a place where you can come and be trusted, be confidential, just have a place that you feel safe. Skills and tools, you gain that when you learn one-on-ones. One-on-ones is a very interesting skill to master. And I think that once you master that, you then have the ability to make money with it. You can help others. It's really a good tool to have. You can provide guidance. When you are doing a one-on-one, you can, or when you're in a one-on-one session, you can ask for guidance without feeling vulnerable, or even feeling vulnerable, but being able to know that you're in a safe space. And also, if you're conducting the one-on-one, you can give them tools and a pathway to be able to get to where they need to go to be successful. So it does provide that guidance. And it's also a place where people can fail, right? You can always have them. Failing is not bad. A lot of people want to look at failing as, something that's bad, but learn from your failures, right? Embrace your failures. I feel like, fail big, and then you can be able to move forward. So you also give them, again, falling back on that safe space, even for yourself, an opportunity when you're one-on-one, maybe with your mentor, to say, I totally effed up on that, but I feel okay, and it gives me an opportunity to correct that. Moving back to the financial stability, I know when I first came into the Dandelion cohort, I expressed with Jason as well as Crystal that this is something that I've been, and also Jerica, this is something that I've been longing to do. I want to be able to be a consultant. I want to be able to transition all of my art skills into being a mentor or someone, a supporting system for someone else. So I then also want to be able to retire from my 9-to-5 and possibly embrace my consultant career and pathway and transition. So I really believe that these skills that I have learned and hopefully will continue to learn with Dandelion will help me to transition into that consultingship and make money, stability. So the goal with this workshop is to reach out to my urban communities, reach out to the youth, because what better way to start teaching is when we are young, at a younger age, each one teach one, especially the youth, and reach out to our artists and companies. So companies is definitely a big one. They're the ones that do a lot of one-on-ones, definitely with my organization. I always dread having to get my one-on-one feedback on how I'm doing at work. But yes, so that's my goal, and that's my focus target group with my workshop. Can you advance, please? Okay, so before I say why fund Dandelion, moving forward, I wanted to let you know that the skills that I acquired during my time with the Dandelion cohort was I was able to, and Jerica was actually one of the ones that helped me develop this. I was able to then reach out to my community that Bahia movement serves, my artists, and actually do a couple of one-on-ones by myself. And before, it was all just in my head. I was trying to say, well, can I do it? I'm not sure which way to go. I don't know how. I don't have the guidance. I don't have the skills. But once I was able to sit down with Jason, once I was able to sit down with Crystal on those one-on-ones that we had, it gave me more of a structure, especially with Jason, being able to see how he structured my agenda was really amazing to me. And everything that I had up in my brain, in my head, he put it on paper, and it just, my light bulb went off. So I wanted to let you know that it's working. It's hands-on already being available, that I'm able to provide this platform in real time to my community. So thank you again for this knowledge, Jason and Crystal. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Imes and Jerica, for even providing this type of platform. So moving on to the next slide. Why? Why fund Dandelion now? Because it is, as you can see in real time, it helps. It helps me. It will help artists like me to gain the knowledge, gain the confidence, to be able to know that I can do this. It was some things that I was fighting with, and a little fear, but it let me overcome that fear and know that I can be a consultant for artists and others. It will help me build my urban communities, because it's not many people that look like me that's going into my communities. And I think that's really important for me to be able to show the youth that I look like you. If you see me, you can be me. If you see it, you can do it. So I want to be able to have something that they can see, and they can say, I see you, I can do that, right? So I want to build urban leaders. That's what I want to do in my community. And why not share the wealth? It's very interesting. I feel that it's a lot of organizations that acquire the money, but they're very scarce on sharing it. And I just feel, why can't we just get the money directly to those that are feet on the ground? You know, just provide the money directly to the people that are already in the community's feet on the ground, instead of me having to go and ask or beg or feel like I'm begging these big organizations that are still definitely white hierarchy, white supremacy, top heavy. I just feel like we can share the wealth and let it trickle down a little more and easier. So yes, please support and fund Dandelion, because it is working in real time, as you can see. Thank you. Thank you, Jason, Crystal, Dandelion cohorts, and Imes. Thank you so very much. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat. All right.
Thank you so much, Afia. I am going to spotlight myself real quick. So I'm going to share briefly what Violeta had been working on. And just to give a little bit of context, we really truly centered relationships, and life occurred. So there's been a lot on Violeta's plate. So Violeta has not been able to join us today. And Violeta has been working diligently on a lesson plan as well. And that lesson plan specifically is taking a look at models of mutuality rather than just taking a look at the nonprofit model. How do we actually create models of mutuality, whether that be cooperatives, whether that be collectives, or whether that be mutual care networks? And how do we share these kinds of models with young people specifically as they are starting a process of labor, as they are starting a process of organizing, as they are starting a process of making and creating things? Violeta's real target audience has been youth and young adults. That is definitely their primary target audience, as they are one of the full-time folks with 5 Elements, which is fiscally sponsored by Independent Arts and Media and provides graffiti and hip hop education to Bay Area youth, mostly in San Francisco, but I know they've gone beyond San Francisco as well. And so she has been very clear that one of the tools that is necessary and needed is a better understanding of collectivism, and being able for young people to be able to see models of how it works in real space and time. So their lesson plan will invite people into 3 different case studies, one that will take a look again at a collective, one that'll take a look at a cooperative, and one that'll look at a mutual care or aid network, and offer folks an opportunity to talk about the pluses and minuses of those models and how they might be able to imagine those models in the future within their own work, within their own communities, within the art and creative process. That is the piece that Violeta has been working on. And those are the 4 fabulous and amazing workshops that our cohort has been engaged in. I'm going to remove my spotlight because I want to just take a moment and give all of our amazing people a round of applause, because it's been such a long time.
Yes.
Please, we are going to share some more insights and learnings, but as you're thinking, Violeta's workshop is called, great question, thank you, 1 second, I have it, it's right here on a separate screen that I should be looking at, is la 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 la, and I let it go. It's what models is basically the title of her workshop. Thank you. How to choose a model for your work is kind of the title. Crystal, I'm going to spotlight you so that you can share some. Oh wait, I guess I'm sharing the insights first. Wait a minute.
Yes, and then I'm the learnings. Yeah.
And then spotlight for me. And I'm going to do a quick screen share back over here. So what are some of the tactics that we shared and that we adopted in the Dandelion Arts Finance Training Program cohort? Well, our first tactic that we used was that we were and are and will always be relationally focused and not product oriented. That is our guiding principle, first and foremost. When you lead with relationships, more is possible, but it might not be what you expect is possible. And we like the unexpected and we like the emergent. So we are relation focused, not product oriented. Another tactic shared and adopted, and we have writings up that we'll follow up with you all about on these as well. Opening and closing rituals were incorporated into all of our sessions, whether that be our cohort meetings, whether that be our advisory group meetings, even whether that was our one-on-one sessions. We opened and closed in the same way for absolutely everything. We ritualized openings and closings. As you heard from Afia, we believe in the power of one-on-ones and that we know one-on-ones are a model for transferring knowledge, building skills, and developing confidence. Some work can be done in small groups or even semi-large groups, but real, authentic transference of skill and knowledge happens in one-on-one settings. And we prioritized and built in one-on-ones into the model from Point Jump. In fact, one-on-ones were one of the first things we suggested in the retooling of even the data collection. When we were talking to Lisa and Jerica at the very beginning, we said, surveys are great, one-on-ones are better. One-on-ones get more detailed information that we can actually use and apply. And so one-on-ones are a core organizing model for us, an educational model. And last, keeping it small demonstrates our commitment to collective learning and development. We had 4 people in our cohort. Partly that was budget, just to be honest. Partly that was because we believe in small. We believe there should be more small things, not less small things. We actually think more small things more frequently, even more so than more large things. We actually believe that more small things actually build the relationships that we seek to sustain, and you don't get that same kind of depth in relationship building when you think about scale at large numbers. And we really want to, again, keep our mind focused on the learning and transference among Black, Indigenous, queer, trans, immigrant, disabled, refugee, and poor artists. That is who we are looking to build with and who we are building with. And so therefore, it is important for us to keep it small so that we can keep it adaptive and accessible. Crystal, you're up next.
All righty. Could you, do the, okay. All right, so so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things we learned and some of our emerging strategies. So one of the things we learned was go at the speed of trust and mutuality. And again, we have to give credit to Adrienne Marie Brown for the go at the speed of trust. And what that looks like is, again, is building on relationships. And but also, as you may have experienced at the beginning with our 5 guides, it also means letting people show up in the ways they need to show up, and being flexible about that, which leads me to the second one, which is remain flexible and open to change. And what that looks like is not going into a workshop or a one-on-one or any situation necessarily with this sort of agenda written in stone. Because so often people coming from marginalized backgrounds, we need to talk sometimes. So that means leaving space for that, and not being so focused on the outcome, but also giving space for people to be who they need to be in the moment. And it's amazing how much that actually can change a situation. And I think for the best, because I feel like when we give people that possibility, that engenders trust, and it engenders an openness that you don't necessarily get when you already have everything written in stone. So the third one is to communicate in multiple ways, frequently, and with care. One of the things we know is that not everybody communicates the same way. We know, for instance, that a lot of younger people prefer text. We know that some people prefer phone calls, so we kind of just tried to do a multitude of things when we sent out messages, and frequently. Because personally, I know, for instance, sometimes somebody sent me an email and it just gets lost in my pile of emails. So I need a reminder sometimes. And so that might take a little bit more time, but it's worth it in order, again, to build those relationships and to let people know that we not just expect them to be there, but that we want them to be there, and that we know that we think that their presence is important to the process. So the other thing we learned, which was a bit of a surprise, but maybe not really, is that by doing this cohort, we learned that we have created a model for training, for the training of the trainers on arts finance topic. So not only do we want to create another cohort, we actually want to create a program that trains trainers, so that, again, like a stone in water, so it ripples out. And again, that doesn't mean we want like some huge program, but it means that like, you know, we want like the people in our cohort to be able to teach people in their community the things that they've learned. And the last thing on this list is that we also realized that the project was underfunded, which actually happens quite often. Because a lot of times when applying for grants, it doesn't really take in all the work that is needed to be done in order to have like a program like this. So that means often that there's a lot of unpaid work. There's a lot of unpaid administrative work. So this was also one of our learnings. And one of the things we also learned from the whole project is that people need to get paid in order to do their art, in order to like contribute to their communities, and also like just for survival.
So I want to be cognizant of time. It is 2:06 and we are ending at 2:15. So I'm going to say if you have questions, please put them in chat and we will actually follow up with a document where we answer all your questions for you. That'll be the easiest way for us to deal with this and ensure that we still end at 2:15, which we want to end at 2:15. So please put questions in chat, but we want to give a vision for where it is that we can go before we leave here today. It's great to share where we have been and what we have done, and we cannot end there. We have a vision for where is it that we want to go. So Crystal, do you want to start this?
Yeah, so basically this is a budget that we created. And the first priority is to raise $10,000 so this first cohort will get to actually get paid to do 2 workshops. One where the workshop is a sort of way to sort of evaluate and to sort of get out the kinks. And then the second workshop would be more for general public as a, you know, a way to like really sort of test their skills and test the workshop and what's going on. But we want people to be able to be paid for that.
The second priority that we have is we want to continue convening and expanding an advisory group. This last year, the advisory group was a volunteer-run group of myself, Crystal, Jerica, and Lisa. As we move forward, it is going to have to include previous members of the cohort, as well as additional folks that are out in the community already providing arts finance training. That must be compensated. The advisory group must be compensated. Additionally, while we have a wonderful seed to a vision and a dream, that dream must be collectively generated and realized by a larger advisory group. It's one thing for a mostly white plus Crystal group to do that articulation. It is another thing to say we are not going to do that articulation because we do not have the proper people at the table to do that articulation in the moment. So we chose in 2022 to prioritize the cohort versus prioritizing the advisory group because we wanted to shift who was at the decision-making table once we move into 2023 and beyond. In order for that to happen, again, it must be compensated. So while it looks like a lot of money, it actually isn't when you think about having to compensate about 7 to 10 people over the course of a year to actually engage in deep work in envisioning a larger landscape of arts finance training.
I just want to add one more thing to that. And the reason we really want to pay people is because we want to make sure that the advisory board also reflects like the cohort. And one of the things we know is that so many advisory boards are very white and or people who have disposable incomes and can afford to go to meetings without being paid. And we want to disrupt that pattern. So we want like $40,000 so we could run another cohort. And we're asking for $40,000 because again, as I said earlier, we realized that this cohort was underfunded. So we don't want that to happen again. And so again, the theme is we want people to get paid for their work so that they can participate without suffering hardship.
The fourth priority is seed funding for year 2. We started this year with no seed funding for year 2. We realized that was a mistake, actually. It was actually a big mistake to start something and not have guaranteed funding coming in the future. So we realized that if and when we want to move forward, that we must actually raise the money for some guaranteed funding in year 2, so that both the second cohort and the advisory group can actually implement their vision in year 2 and have at least some money to play with in year 2 to allocate towards their vision.
And then we have $5,000 for additional admin costs, because again, one of the things we realized is that Jason and I actually ended up doing a lot of admin without pay. So we think this is also a paid position for a project of this type and size.
So the grand total is about $200,000 for all of this to work over the course of about 2 years. So that is what we're looking at in terms of a budget. A rough estimation, we are looking at, we built this budget off of paying folks $150 an hour, every single person, advisory group members, cohort members, consultants, every single person that would be touched by this program would be paid market rate. To go back to one of our learnings, which I think Afia shared with us, which is we deserve market rate, even as advisors.
Again, I'd like to add something to that a lot of grants also say that consultants and people should be paid market rate, but seldom is that like a real possibility. I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No, go for it. How can we support Dandelion? Do you want to share this, Crystal?
Yeah. Well, one of the ways to support Dandelion is to fund the program if you have that sort of power or in that position to fund us. Another way is to talk about the Dandelion project with people you know who are funders or who are in positions to fund programs, and invite us to talk about Dandelion Art Finance Training Program to your community or constituents. And you can invite and pay the cohort members to facilitate their workshops.
Yes, all of our cohort members will be available in 2023 to facilitate their workshop.
And just one thing I want to add real quick, related to essentially like how to support this program. I know a lot of information has been presented today. One thing, as one of the partners of the Dandelion program, Independent Arts Media will be helping spearhead the fundraising for this for both year 1 and year 2 going forward. For the funders who are in this meeting, be expecting to hear from me very soon to talk about more specifics. As Jerica noted in the chat, we do have more detailed versions of the budget. We can break down more information about the workshops, about the training of the trainers, about the advisory group, about all the different pieces that we've been talking about. Today was meant to be a very detailed presentation. And so now we can kind of take it to the next level of what the future will look like, not just what we've gotten to so far. So we're very excited to continue this conversation with everybody. So yeah, just had to interject that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Lisa. We will be following up with an email that'll include a link to this recording, a link to the slideshow, and some additional resources. These were all developed over the course of Dandelion. We have our report. We have an article that Crystal and I wrote about how to cultivate belonging in virtual space. We actually created a resource guide on setting a culture of and creating a container for belonging. We have didactics on triads and breakout groups. We also have a slideshow and creative prompt called What Do You Want to Create, which is how we created all of this. And we have a growing Dandelion Arts Finance training bibliography that we will also be sharing. And this is where you can find more information about all of us. Again, you will get links to all of this in your inbox. I will say within the next week, because I don't want to overpromise something. So, anyone from our fabulous cohort of people want to share any final thoughts before we close out today? We have about 1 minute.
And if you do have lingering questions, throw them into the chat. As we said, we will be following up with more answers since we didn't have a time to really do the Q&A that we had hoped for.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Real quickly, Afia here. Please find it in your budget to fund us. I think that this is a beautiful, amazing experience. Again, I would not have even thought about trying to do this without Dandelion, without IAMS, without Jerica. I'm living proof. It's worth it. So yeah, I'm a born and raised Black African American from Oakland, from the hood, that's learning this. So this is what we're talking about funding. Fund us, fund it, because more of people like me need it. So thank you.
I just also want to quickly say that it was just this whole process for me was a process of learning to speak up and be heard. And that's not just Dandelion, of course, it's my whole process, but Dandelion was really a big part of that for me, actually, in the past few months.
And I just want to say, yes, Katie, we are definitely accepting individual donations.
You can donate through Independent Arts and Media.
Yes, because I think we all are Independent Arts and Media. You can find us all on their website, or go directly to I know my website. You can donate directly, which links back to Independent Arts.
Well, thank you everyone so much for attending today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you all so much. We're so glad to have you all here. Thank you all.